rules on advertising. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question. I call Darian Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just taking a brief call to reiterate Labor's support for this bill to go to Select Committee. I was interested in Shane Ardern's contribution, actually, because he was the chair of the Government Administration Committee that considered the Therapeutic Agency Bill back in 2006 and 2007, and I was actually the deputy chair, and I remember those events very, very well. So I do find it very interesting that we're now here considering a bill that actually had the preparation, had the foundation work done under the Labor government. There were genuine concerns around the therapeutic medicines bill at the time, but they could have been overcome, Mr. Speaker, with a bit of genuine working together on it. But of course, as we've heard from some of my colleagues, there was a whole lot of politicking that went on from the national government, a whole lot of, I think, racking up the public about opposition to anything Australian, because that was what a lot of it was about. It was about really people feeling, they didn't trust any kind of treaty with the Australians, even though we'd actually signed up to this treaty in 2003, and it did leave our government, and still does, leave our government in quite an embarrassing position. And I'm enjoying at the moment, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I am enjoying at the moment seeing the opposition to the food bill that the Honourable Kate Wilkinson is having to deal with too, because it does remind me of the same kind of opposition that came to the therapeutic medicines bill. The kind of extreme on the one hand, and the government trying to assure people that it's not as bad as they think it is, and there is a sort of kind of chickens coming home to roost feeling about what's going on with the food bill. Just in talking about the Medicines Amendment Bill, I think it's also worth reminding the Parliament about where we were when Labor became the government in 2000 around the costs of medicine. If you went to the pharmacy, it would cost you somebody $15 for one prescription, for one item on a prescription. $15 for one item, and if you had two, it was $30, and if you had three, it was $45. It was prohibitive, and that had happened from the previous national government. And of course, what happened after we'd gone through terrible economic times and lowering wages and all sorts of other things under the national government, is many families couldn't afford the medicines. So what was happening is people sometimes go to the doctor and get the prescription, but then they couldn't afford to go to the pharmacy and collect the prescription. And so we had terrible things starting to occur in families where they couldn't get the basics. As we know, medicines are often preventative as well as cure. Families were unable to get the preventative medicine that would stop something becoming quite chronic. Something becoming chronic, and sometimes people ending up in hospitals. I also smiled to myself today when I heard Tony Ryle talking about visiting the Newtown Union Health, or Porirua Union Health Centre. Yes, that's right. Probably went to shut it down. And I did smile to myself about that, Mr. Speaker, because again, the only reason that exists is it's a Labor initiative. The whole primary health organisation model that this government now likes to gloat about actually came from all of the work done by Labor. And actually, ironically, it's not called the Porirua Union Health Centre for nothing. It was started by unions to provide health care for low-paid, low-income workers at a time when they couldn't afford to see the doctor, let alone go to their pharmacy. So I do, and so Labor, there's a long history here, so I always find it very ironical when Tony Ryle and other people stand up and talk about all the wonderful things the government is doing in health. Labor built a platform. We turned things around where it was becoming impossible. In fact, do you remember what National did in the 1990s, where they had cash registers at the hospitals, where somebody actually had to pay to be seen at the hospital. What's that? Somebody, but these people, patients had to pay. So is the member advocating that we put the cash registers back? Is that what the member's advocating? Because he should tell us. Oh, well, that's true. Of course, he used to sit behind one of the cash registers. But just let's remember how far we've come in primary health care and in medicine and in pharmacy care under a Labour government.
That's because Labour cares.
And Labour does care, that's right. And so that's why we find this bill pretty ironic. What we had in 2007 was a whole lot of politicking, convenient politicking that went on from the National Party that was nothing to do with what was good for New Zealand or the relationship with Australia. Was nothing to do with that at all. I sat on the Select Committee, I saw it happen, it was disgraceful. So I'm pleased that this bill is going to, has come forward and will be going to the Select Committee, but so much of the work was done under a Labour government. So much could be already in train, Mr Speaker. That hasn't happened because of the politicking from the National Party when Labour was in government. I also want to remind the House that the whole area of nurse practitioners was something else that Labour introduced, and I sat on the Health Select Committee when that was introduced. Legislation was introduced and then followed by regulations, and we went through it. I think it was one of the most innovative things we actually did, because we all know that nurses are in the community and do provide hands-on care, and why shouldn't they prescribe? But of course what we have is a health system under pressure. What we're seeing, it's not just about what happens in hospitals, Mr Speaker, it's what happens in the community. What we're seeing is caregivers going on strike on Thursday morning because they get paid $13.61 an hour, 11 cents more than the minimum wage. So, it's fine to talk about medicines and send this bill off to Select Committee, but we have got some issues that this country needs to deal with, this government needs to deal with. This government needs to start taking seriously, starting with those that care for our most vulnerable in our community.
We need a government that cares.
Dr. Jiang Yang.
Now, first of all, I must say I